okay? And very similar to what we talked about yesterday. Remember, we were talking about percentages. We're intermixing different ideas, percentages to fractions and decimals and all that stuff. I'm trying to keep track of how we're going to convert between each of those, all right? Yesterday, we talked about converting from a percent to a decimal. Today, we're going to do the opposite, all right? So if we're given a decimal, how can we write that as a percent, okay? And what we're going to do is take that decimal point, and we can think about, remember yesterday, we had our original number, right? We had our percent. So let me just kind of write this off to the side. Maybe we had 40%, right? We took that value, we moved our decimal 2 places to the left. We said that this is 0.4 or 0.4 as a decimal, right? Today, it's a very, very similar process. We're going to take 0.6, which is our decimal, and we're going to convert that to a percent, all right? So what we do in this instance is we write down our original decimal that they give us, so the 0.6. And instead of moving 2 decimal places to the left, we're going to move 2 decimal places to the right to get our whole number. Then we're going to write that as a fraction, as a decimal, so on and so forth. So we get in the habit of understanding how they all kind of connect, all right? So if I'm converting 0.6 to a percent, I take 0.6, move that decimal point over. If I have a gap or if I have a missing spot there, what do I have to fill that with each time? 0. Good. Excuse the 0 that I started with, and I'm left with 60. And that's going to give me 60%. Okay. So if we know how to go one way from a percent to a decimal, we should be able to know how to go the other way, decimal to percent. The only thing that's tricky, right, is probably understanding which way you're moving your decimal point. You should probably make a note that when you're going percent to decimal, you move to the left. When you're going from decimal to percent, you move to the right. Yeah. So percent to decimal, you move to the left. Decimal to percent, you move to the right. If I were to write this as a fraction, so like I said, just trying to get in the habit of writing everything different ways. What do I know that my fraction's always out of when I'm talking about percentages? 100. Good. So then how would I write this as a fraction? 60 over 100. Good. Any questions about that first example? Everybody good with that? Let's look at a different example. If I want to convert 0.03 as a decimal to a percent. I'm going to take my 0.03. I'm going to move my decimal place in which direction? To the left or to the right? To the right. How many times? So a guess or an answer? It's to the right. So have confidence in your answer, right? So I move it 2 decimal places, and I'm left with 3. And that's my percentage. How would I write that percentage as a fraction? Is it 3 over 100, right? All of my percentages are always out of 100. And that's something that we need to make sure that we remember. That's going to come up in Thursday's lesson and a little bit next week as we progress through percentages and talking about different ways to write them and you know, kind of simplify using fractions and stuff like that. We always want to make sure our denominator is 100. Okay. Any questions about that example? Let's take a look at one more. 0.15. We're going to convert that to a percent. What's the first thing that I need to do? Move the decimal. Where am I moving it? To the right, how many times? 2. Now what? Get rid of the 0. I'm left with 15. And is that my final answer? Yeah, right. After you move it twice, you get rid of that 0 out in front. You're left with the 15 as your percentage. And again, what is that as a fraction? 15 over 100. Okay. Just for fun, let's take a look at this real quick. If I had 1.25, it's a little different, right? What would I do in this instance? Does anything change with my process? No, we're still going to move it over, right, to the right twice. But now what's my final answer? 125%. What's that as a fraction? What's that? What's that? Okay, good. 1 1/4, or just 125 over 100. You converted it to a mixed number, which is awesome. You can leave it as this though, 125%. We can have percents that are more than 100. Okay, now it's all out of 100. A lot of times you'll see this, if something increases by a certain amount, that means that it increased by, as you said, 1 1/4 times whatever it used to be. So something increases by 125%. For example, if something's $100, right? And it increases the next year to $125, it increased by 125%. It increased the total amount that it was, and then an additional quarter of what that original price was also. You'll see that a lot talking about prices, things like that. Companies increase in profit or revenue, whatever it might be. So some real world examples for you to kind of connect to. Any questions about converting from a decimal to percent, or what we talked about yesterday when we're converting percent to decimal? We know that the difference is we move to the left from a percent to decimal, move to the right from decimal to percent, and we should keep everything pretty on track if we remember that. Okay. Any questions at all? Okay.